Hey everyone, my name is Dylan, and I am that nerdy guy. Welcome to the first episode of the show. I have some recent news topics to cover this week, as well as I want to talk about Captain America Civil War. It actually just premiered yesterday. But before I get started, I wanted to introduce myself and give you an idea of what you can expect from the show from now on. As I said earlier, my name is Dylan. I'm from Pennsylvania. I work a crappy part-time job. I like to draw a lot. I actually do commission work. You can actually see my artwork at facebook.com/Dillon Fisher Artwork. That's DILLON FISHER Artwork. I enjoy movies and video games. I'm actually borderline obsessed. Like, it actually might be a mental disorder with Godzilla and Gamera, King Kong, just giant monster, kaiju movies in general. I have an entire wall dedicated to monster toys, figurines, books, games, movies, merchandise, water bottles, and stuff like that. It's crazy. I spend way too much money on this kind of stuff. I'm also really big into Marvel comics, particularly Spider-Man. I drive a 2006 Pontiac G6 GT. I actually have spider web decals going down the sides of the doors and a spider logo on the hood, as well as like a Spider-Man steering wheel. And I even keep a Spider-Man trick or treat pail in the back seat as like a little trash can in there too. I really enjoy horror movies. In fact, my birthday is actually on Halloween. Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite series, but I also enjoy stuff like Halloween, Friday the 13th, a lot of the classic stuff, but I also enjoy newer stuff too, like VHS is a very cool horror movie. But enough about me. I'm pretty sure I'll have plenty of time for embarrassing stories later. I started That Nerdy Guy to be kind of a central hub podcast of geek news that fans of pretty much anything pop culture related can listen to and be filled in each week. The layout of the show will be pretty simple. Each episode will be about a half hour in length, and we'll start with news about upcoming/current things happening in geek culture at the time. Think like movie trailers and releases, comic book news, video game announcements, etc. After I cover the news, the show will move on to the main feature of that episode. Like a good example will be this episode is covering the release of Captain America Civil War. The main feature can be really about anything, like a movie or video game review, an interview with a guest that I might have on the show, coverage of a convention, and I'll end each episode with closing comments, like last-minute thoughts on the subject about the main feature, answering any comments or questions from the Facebook page, and directing fans of whatever the main feature segment is towards other websites or channels or even other podcasts that cover that subject. Like this episode is covering Captain America, so I'll direct you to something more superhero related or comic book related. All that said, this episode might run a little longer, might not, because I want to cover a few older topics from earlier in this year as well. Alright, I think I have you up to speed. Let's get right into things. And 3, 2, 1. Alright, let's cover the news. In the world of gaming, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare has been revealed. Trailer looks pretty cool. I'm actually not a big Call of Duty fan. In fact, I think the last Call of Duty game that I've ever played was World at War. I'm not super big on first-person shooters. I'm more into fighting games, RPGs, and stuff like that. But this one actually looks like it might be pretty cool. I actually might check it out. I'm a really big sci-fi geek, and seeing that they're going to have all this futuristic technology, even space battles. Like you're going to be able to get into a spaceship and fly into outer space and have like dogfights. That's actually really cool. It's actually kind of funny that this is going to have space battles before Star Wars Battlefront does. In the world of Pokemon Go footage has been revealed, leaks from the beta testing and stuff like that. It looks okay. It's not exactly what everybody was kind of thinking it was going to be. It's not like a main game just with the augmented reality. It actually has this new mechanic for catching and battling and evolving Pokemon. You can't battle a Pokemon and then weaken it and catch it. The entire capture process is just flicking Pokeballs at this Pokemon until it is caught. Battling, it seems like you just drop Pokemon off at gyms, I say that quote-unquote gyms, and leave them there for an undesignated period of time and then come and pick them up after a while or something. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I'll report on it as I find more out. But the evolution is the thing that everybody seems to have the most information on, where you have to collect evolution shards by capturing more than one of the Pokemon you would like to evolve. Say, like if you have a Charmander and you want to evolve that into a Charmeleon, you'd have to collect 10 or so Charmanders and then kind of like fuse them together using evolution shards, and that will evolve your Charmander into a Charmeleon. It seems like a kind of crappy gimmick to get more money. I bet you they're going to be selling these evolution shards like on a market, and it just doesn't seem like it would be my kind of thing. I'll download the game and try it out and see how I feel about it. I'm a big fan of the original Pokemon games and stuff like that, but this just doesn't seem like it's going to kind of get my attention very easily. In other gaming news, video game No Man's Sky is scheduled to be released on June 21st this year. I'm actually really excited for this one. This one looks really cool. Basically, if you haven't seen it yet, it is a massive, massive open world game where you have a spaceship and you can explore planets, but this is massive. There are so many planets that you can explore, and I believe each one is procedurally generated, so it's like every time you visit these planets, like every planet will be different from one another, and it's actually so big that the creators say that you won't even see 1% of the planets in the game. I believe that they said there's like supposed to be almost 20 quintillion planets that you can visit. It's insane. I'm really looking forward to that game. Away from video games, we can move on to television right now. There's only one news thing that I kind of wanted to address here. The TV show SuperGirl. It actually might be in a little bit of trouble. CBS says that the licensing fees are too high for the show, and they plan on trying to get a reduced fee, but if they can't get it, they actually said that it might be the end of the show, or they might try to move it to the CW, which I guess maybe that channel has like a higher budget that they can continue the show on. That's the same channel that the Flash and Arrow are on. So I mean, they've already handled DC shows before, so I'm confident that they could do it. I've never seen the Supergirl show. I've seen the Flash and Arrow, and I'm a really big fan of them though. Moving on to movies though, something interesting. Years ago, I'm pretty sure everybody remembers this movie, Dragon Ball Evolution. The writer Ben Ramsey actually offered an open apology for his work on the film, saying that he feels terrible that everybody received his writing so badly. I've never seen Dragon Ball Evolution, actually. I mean, I've heard plenty about it. A lot of people that I know that are into Dragon Ball have told me a lot about that movie, and it doesn't seem like I really want to see the movie. I think it's kind of cool that he kind of came out and apologized for it and stuff like that. And I don't want to say I think it's not his fault, but I don't want to say I think it is his fault either. I think it's just kind of cool that, he feels bad about something that he worked on, and he doesn't want to upset fans. So he kind of comes out and, hey, I'm sorry that it came out like this. It's not what I wanted. I hope to work on better stuff. I think that's a really cool move, and it's a good way to win fans over. Disney's Zootopia was released recently to overwhelmingly positive reviews. It's in fact currently the highest grossing film of 2016 and the 35th highest grossing film of all time. It actually beat out Frozen when it comes to records. I have not seen Zootopia yet. I'm actually a Disney fan, so I'll see it eventually. I'm actually kind of excited to see it. I just haven't had the time. But yeah, it's good for it. Disney's live action The Jungle Book remake, that is a movie that I'm actually really excited to see. I'm actually think I'm going to be seeing that next weekend here, so maybe I'll talk about that next week. But it released, it has good reviews going so far. It has a great cast with Christopher Walken and Idris Elba. I'm really excited to see it. I've always been a fan of the original Jungle Book. I actually even like the 1994 Jungle Book film that Disney put out. That I've watched that one ever since I was little. Uh, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to know this one here. Warner Brothers' Batman v Superman: The Dawn of Justice opened to incredibly negative reviews. It actually had the fourth biggest film opening of all time with $166 million, but it quickly dropped over the weekend, experiencing the biggest Friday to Sunday ticket sale drop in modern superhero film history. Yeah, I saw that movie too. And I gotta say, there's a reason why it did so bad. It's not the greatest film. I think that they could have done something cool with it. Like, it's Batman versus Superman, man. I mean, it's not, shouldn't be that hard to figure out what to do with it. It just, the movie was too much Bruce Wayne and too much Clark Kent. Not enough Batman and Superman. I think they spent too much time thinking about setting up a universe instead of working on creating a good film. Away from that, though, Suicide Squad. It actually went back for reshoots recently. Original reports claimed that the reshoots were being done to add more humor to the film because of complaints about Dawn of Justice being too dark, as well as the positive Deadpool being humorous. But further reports actually clarify that they're just adding more action to the final film. We'll see in the final result. This is totally me, the trailer, as well as monster design for Godzilla in the upcoming Shin Gojira, also known as Godzilla Resurgence here in the United States. It was released to mixed reception. Promotion for the film has tied Godzilla to the Evangelion series, with special Godzilla vs. Evangelion merchandise available to purchase in Japanese stores and online. I'm actually liking the new Godzilla design. It's kind of zombie-ish almost, which is actually a lot of fan art is really into the idea of giving Godzilla this zombie look, which was never something I was totally into, but I think it works for this Godzilla. The tail, though, is very, very, very long, which is one thing that I have to nitpick about the movie. I just wish that they would have made it a little shorter, but other than that, I think it looks really good. It looks like a modern-day version of the original Godzilla. The movie seems like it'll be okay. I haven't seen much about it yet, but that comes out July in Japan, so expect that to come over into the States probably about next year at some point. On to Marvel, though. The upcoming Marvel and Sony-produced Spider-Man film has been titled Spider-Man Homecoming. It's expected that Tom Holland is returning as Spider-Man and Marissa Tomei will be Aunt May again. And it's also been revealed that Zendaya, a Disney Channel star from a couple years ago, will actually be in the film. It's not really said about who she's going to be playing right now, but actually a lot of reports think that she might be a new version of the Black Cat. Speaking of Marvel, Deadpool breaks the digital download sales record. It is the fastest selling superhero title available on digital HG. Congratulations, Deadpool. That was a great movie. Back to Warner Brothers, a Monster Apocalypse movie was in production a couple of years ago, but because of Pacific Rim having a similar theme, they canned that film, but the rights just went back up for bid, and a large bidding war was just won by Warner Brothers to gain the rights to a film adaptation. Monster Apocalypse, for those of anybody that doesn't know, it was a tabletop strategy board game similar to, I'd say, maybe Risk. I've never played that game, but it's kind of what I think of when I think of strategy games, where you control armies of small monsters and one large Godzilla-sized monster and run around through a city, and like the you battle them throughout the city, destroy buildings and stuff like that. I actually have quite a few expansion sets of that game. I don't play much anymore, but it actually is a really cool game. The miniatures look awesome. The game was actually canceled a couple of years ago. I think the last thing that they put out was a Voltron expansion pack. But it's really cool to see that they're trying to make a comeback with this film. I think the film could turn out to be actually pretty damn cool. Originally, it was actually supposed to be directed by Tim Burton, and he had this whole idea of like changing around the story from what it was in the game to having the monsters like hide from humans underground and then come back a couple years later. And I'm hoping that they changed it from that story. I was never a big fan of that when that was running around news and stuff like that. Lastly, this actually just came out about a day or two ago. The suits for the new Power Rangers were revealed, and typical fan fashion, it's dividing people. I actually think they look pretty cool. It's a very upgraded look to the original Power Rangers, and of course everybody's going to be drawing comparisons to the Iron Man costume from the Marvel movies because of the armored look. I was never a super big Power Ranger fan. I mean, of course, I watched it a lot when I was a kid because everybody else did. But I thought they were pretty cool. I mean, I always liked the giant robots that they had, the Zords, especially when they were dinosaurs. But I think the new Power Ranger movie looks like it might be okay. They revealed an image of the villain, Rita Repulsa, and she doesn't look as good as the Power Rangers do. They have her in like kind of like almost a Poison Ivy-ish suit, where she looks like she has like plant material almost growing all over her. It looks okay, but it's not the Rita Repulsa that we all grew up with, so I can understand why some fans would be upset. But on the other hand, the Power Rangers themselves, I think, look pretty freaking cool. Alright, that about wraps up the news this week. Let's move on to the main feature of this episode, which is a review of Captain America Civil War. Captain America Civil War. Let me just get this out of the way. I loved this movie. It's easily the best of the Captain America trilogy, if not the best of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. The acting is phenomenal, the action is thrilling, the comedy's great, the story's engaging. It's just a perfect example of not only a Marvel movie, but a superhero movie in general. Now, I won't really go into any major spoilers, but I'm going to put a mild spoiler warning here now for those of you that don't want to hear any spoilers at all. Pause the show and come back after you've seen the movie. Are you good? You sure? You paused it? You saw the movie? Alright. Okay. Now let's move on. The story is actually kind of complicated when thinking about it, because there are actually about 3 stories that tie into each other. The main Civil War story is about a superhero registration act, if you haven't read the comics. It's put into effect after an incident involving the Avengers, resulting in several civilian deaths, on top of incidents happening from the previous movies that also resulted in civilian deaths. The act essentially restricts the heroes from acting on any threat before getting government clearance first. Steve Rogers, also known as Captain America, doesn't agree with the decision, while Tony Stark, also known as Iron Man, believes that it is the right thing to do. This causes a division between the superheroes, where some take Iron Man's side, while others take Captain America's side to defend what they believe is the correct choice. The second story kind of follows Captain America searching for, finding, and protecting his friend Bucky Barnes, also known as the Winter Soldier, from the government after he's been blamed for a terrorist attack. Cap believes that even while Barnes has done a lot of bad things while under Hydra's control, his old friend is still inside looking for a way out. And then the last story, it actually ties into the previous story as well as the main Civil War story a little bit. It revolves around a guy named Zemo, who's the villain of the film. Zemo is a Sokovian who lost his family in the events of Age of Ultron, the previous movie, who attempts to use the Winter Soldier as well as the Registration Act to tear the Avengers apart as revenge. Now, while there are really three plots running through the movie, they all blend together really nicely to create one flowing story. Things that happen here affect someone's actions here, and so on. It works great, and it doesn't spend too much time in one story over the others. They all get a spotlight. My one complaint would be that the film tends to jump around a lot, though. One moment we are dealing with the registration, then suddenly we jump to a different country and start working on a different part of the story. While that can be pretty difficult to follow sometimes, even when there are massive, and I mean massive title cards showing where we currently are, it doesn't really feel any different from where we were 30 seconds before. When the movie cuts to Germany, it doesn't feel different from New York. This could have been remedied by even having a scene where the characters are boarding like a plane or a jet, explaining where they're going and why, which we do kind of see that sometimes in the movie, but it doesn't really nail in the fact like, oh, we're traveling all the way across the world. It's not really hard to follow, but it can be a bit jarring finding out that the characters are on the other side of the world when they were just talking in Queens a minute ago. Now, the characters are all great. I had no problems with the casting in this film. As usual, Chris Evans is always as great as Cap. Robert Downey Jr., he's amazing as Tony Stark. Scarlett Johansson, she's as great as she's always been in the movies. Even Marissa Tomei as Aunt May, the new Aunt May, she was great. And when she was originally announced as the new Aunt May, I was actually really worried because I was so used to the old and frail Aunt May from the comics and the earlier Raimi movies. Sally Field, she seemed a little too young for me, but I think she did a good job in the Amazing Spider-Man series. But Marissa Tomei was actually really good. She interacts with Tom Holland just as you would think a caring motherly figure would. And her fun little quips with Tony Stark during their conversation, they're really funny too, about how like Tony always, like he thinks that she, oh, a hot aunt and stuff like that. I thought that was really funny. I was worried that having a younger Aunt May would ruin the character, but I was actually really surprised at how well she worked. Bravo, Miss Tomei, you're actually going to be my favorite Aunt May so far. Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther, though, I've actually never been exposed to this character until he was announced for this film. Sorry, and even then, I still didn't know much all about him. I never read any comics with him or anything like that. But I thought Boseman was fantastic. He seemed like an overall nice guy before he was revealed to be the Black Panther. And then when he came out as the Panther, he just kicked serious ass. He put on a great performance. He was cool and nice when he needed to be. He was scared and sad when he needed to be. He was downright pissed off when he needed to be, which is what a great actor does. He put on an awesome performance, and it actually got me really interested in the character. I'd really like to check out some comics of them. And now finally, the big one, Tom Holland as the terrifying, the deadly, the amazing Spider-Man. He was fantastic. The best Spider-Man we have ever gotten on the big screen. Tobey and Andrew, they were both great, and I love both of their respective series, but they did both have their flaws. Tobey Maguire, he was more Peter Parker than Spider-Man. He didn't quip around a lot and stuff like that, and Andrew Garfield was kind of the opposite. He was not the greatest Peter Parker we've had, but he was an awesome Spider-Man. Holland takes the very essence of Spider-Man, especially the early years of Spider-Man, and brings it to life. This is a very young Peter and a very young Spidey. He's only been crime fighting for about 6 months at the time of the film, and he's clearly new at this, and he's trying to hide the secret as best as a 16-year-old can. I haven't seen anything else with Holland in it yet, but I'm going to seek out some of the other films that he's been in and give them a watch. I can see this kid becoming a really big name in Hollywood. He's a great actor. He really gets into his character, and that's great, especially for a young actor, because his acting skills can only get better from here. This is the first time Spidey's appeared in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and as usual, they nailed the casting. So bravo Marvel on that, and bravo Tom Holland. His new costume is so cool. It was like the old Ditko and Romita style Spider-Man, but it had modern adjustments and technology. Like he has his web cartridges along his belt, and the web shooters seem to be sticking outside of his costume, which that's cool. They did that a couple of times in the comics. The eyes do their little camera thing. I'll talk about that here in just a second. Back to the web shooters, it's cool that they kept the mechanical web shooters like they did. I knew that they were going to do that. They wouldn't do the organic web shooters like they did with the Raimi movies. He made a homemade costume, and you see it in action very briefly through bad quality YouTube videos. I actually really wish we could have seen him in action with that original suit before seeing the upgraded version. Like, there could have been a small fight scene where Spider-Man was fighting, I don't know, Hawkeye or something like that, and Tony could have looked at him after the fight and made some smart-ass comment about the suit, and then offers to fix him up a new one, which we did kind of get him saying something like that, but it was a small, quick scene that just during the conversation that he had in Peter's house. But I have a feeling that there was a deleted scene left on the cutting room floor that kind of gave us more of the do-it-yourself Spidey suit that Peter made. Hopefully we'll see it on the Blu-ray or DVD. The new suit also features those huge shuttering pieces around the eyes, the black part of the eyes. They shutter kind of like a camera lens. They get bigger and smaller. Before the film was released, there was huge speculation about these. Some fans thought that they would zoom in and out so Peter could like zoom in on like his targets and stuff like that. Some thought that they were designed just to express emotion, so like when Peter would like be surprised, they would get bigger and stuff like that. But the final film doesn't really explain them, which is kind of sad. When Tony first discovers Peter's suit, he asks about these massive goggles that he uses, and Peter explains that his senses are going crazy and somehow the goggles help him from keeping him in focus, but that's all we really get. I kind of wish that we would have gotten some form of explanation as to why these eyepieces move, but that's just kind of me being a geek and nitpicking something small. Now, as much as I would love to keep talking about the new Spider-Man, I should probably move on. The effects in the film, they're as amazing as ever in the Marvel films. It takes a lot to make superheroes look as amazing as they do in the comics, but still believable enough for a live-action film. But these guys, they pull it off every time. Spider-Man does sort of look unfinished in some shots, especially when he's jumping and swinging around. You can clearly tell it's a computer-generated model. I'm not sure exactly what they could have done to fix this, whether that be making the model a little darker or texturing it a little better, but it's rather distracting sometimes. I'm not sure if they just ran out of time when they were working on the film or if it was just a poor job. It's nothing terrible. It's still good CGI. It just stands out from the other CGI in the film, which looks amazing. The tone of the film is your typical Marvel tone, action with a generous yet subtle amount of fun. The action in the film was amazing, and probably the most anticipated scene of the entire movie was the huge battle between Team Captain America and Team Iron Man, and it paid off big time. This scene was almost 20 minutes of non-stop action, bouncing between multiple one-on-one battles between your favorite superheroes, and they were constantly switching battles. Like one moment it was Ant-Man versus Iron Man, then it was bounce to Captain America versus Spider-Man, but things would get tossed around and suddenly we had Iron Man versus Bucky and Spider-Man versus Captain America. So chances are you saw your favorite heroes from both sides taking each other on. Then there was a lot of humor in the film as well. The theater was laughing out loud during a lot of the scenes. One of my favorite parts in the movie was actually when Falcon and Bucky were sitting in a car, just sitting there in silence. Bucky finally breaks the silence by asking Falcon if he can move his seat up, to which he says no, which got a good laugh out of me in the theater by itself. But then a few minutes later, the film actually cuts back to them in the car, still sitting in silence, and Bucky just slides over. Everyone in the theater started laughing really hard. It's just those small gags that Marvel does so well that work in these movies, which is something that some other superhero films seem to be afraid of doing. You can have these big, serious superhero action films and include fun parts to lighten the mood. This movie had awesome action, fun gags, and even had a few tear-jerking moments, and it all just works. In the end, Captain America Civil War succeeds in not only being a great Captain America sequel or even a great Marvel film, it also succeeds at being a great movie on its own. People that aren't comic book fans are going to watch this movie and probably be really confused, but they're going to love it all the same. Fans were going to love this movie regardless. It couldn't have been worse than any of the Thor films, which are actually good in their own right, but it's a big bonus that this is as great as it is. It has a few small flaws here and there, but they're easily overshadowed by how great everything else is. The Russo brothers, the cast, and the crew all did an amazing job at putting together what is easily one of the crowning entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I give Captain America Civil War a solid 9 out of 10. Go out and see it as soon as you can. Alright, guys, well, that's it. Thanks for listening to the first episode. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back next week talking about the next subject. I still got to actually figure out which one that will be. I'll work on that throughout the week. If you like the show, you can like me on Facebook. You can search That Nerdy Guy. My logo will be the one that you see on screen. It's a blue circle with a picture of glasses and a red hat. That'll be actually being updated shortly here with a little more oomph to it. But if you like Captain America Civil War, Marvel Comics, comic books in general, you can actually check out, there's a Facebook page, the Marvel Cinematic Universe page, and it's everything Marvel movies. You can actually join the group. Everybody's super cool there. I'm actually friends with one of the admins there, Adrian. Super cool guy. You should actually check out that Facebook page, join it, interact with the people. It's super great. Website-wise, you can check out places like comicbook.com, comicbookresources.com. They'll keep you updated on pretty much anything comic book and Marvel and DC related that you'd be into, that I would not be able to cover on a daily basis. Alright, guys, I'll talk to you later. And remember, don't be shy, let your geek flag fly.